Hello again. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about training zones, training methods, and why specifically WorldTour pros use pyramidal training. This is basically going to be like my last research video, just with a different topic. So I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get into it. The definition of a training method when it relates to sports is training methods are the parameters that we can apply to our exercises in order to achieve some sort of physiological outcome. There are many different types of training methods, but the most popular among endurance athletes are polarized and pyramidal. These two training methods are pretty similar at a quick glance, but they have a few key differences that I'll get into later in this video. For right now, let's dive into the history of pro cyclists training throughout history to develop some background on what early cyclists did to get fast. Even from the early days of cycling as a professional sport, the best athletes trained in a similar way to how the likes of Vingegaard and other top pros train today, like Roglic, Evenepoel, Pogačar, people like that. Gino Bartali, one of the first big names in the sport, trained by doing huge amounts of miles at low intensity and only doing high intensity when racing, and he did race a lot. This resulted in regular 600-mile weeks. Another famous cyclist from the 20th century is Eddie Merckx. I'm sure you have all heard of him. Eddie has hundreds of wins under his belt, including both 5 Tour de France GC wins and 5 Giro d'Italia GC wins. His training lined up with Gino's pretty evenly. He regularly did 600-plus mile training weeks, along with racing for 2 to 3 of those days, with the rest being spent at, which is today commonly referred to as Zone 2, a low to medium endurance pace. A few rest days, high volume, hard work. Those were the constants in their time. Quick background on Gino Bartali. So the reason that he did such huge amounts of miles is because he was a postal worker for the army at the time, and he delivered messages and packages in the frame of his bike, and then he would travel from city to city delivering those packages. So pretty cool to learn about that. Another famous athlete that was the first to truly plan out his training into different blocks and use a strict training method was Greg LeMond. I'm sure you guys have heard of him as well, which he had help with by his American coach Eddie Borsowicz. He used a periodization methodology, which is a more broad concept to base your annual plan on, and it's generally a subset of the methods I'm talking about today, although it can be used as a training method in of itself. These pioneers of the sport are the reason that we have such a rich past and so much information to learn about when it comes to training, even if the principles of it are all pretty simple. Moving back to the present day, let's go over the differences between polarized and pyramidal training. The main gist of polarized training is that you spend, hypothetically, in a perfect world, the majority of your training at either low or high intensity, with little to no time in the middle ground. This is like a tempo range, like not too hard, not too easy. This is why it's called polarized, since your weekly volume is on polar opposites of your zones. Real quick, let's go over what I mean by the middle ground and low to high intensity. When talking about intensity like this, I, and mostly everyone else who talk to, is referring to power zones. Power zones are determined by taking an FTP test, or functional threshold power test, which is basically a 20-minute test. Just go all out, and you take 95% of that, and theoretically that is what you can hold for an hour. After taking this test, you base your zones by what you get on that test. I'll link an article going over what training zones are, the different models, and what an FTP consists of in the description just for the sake of time. The main point of pyramidal training is to spend the majority of your time at a low intensity, like polarized, a lot less at moderate intensity, and even less at max intensity. This training method looks like a pyramid when you split up your volume at different intensities, so that's why it's called pyramidal. You spend the majority of your time at low intensity, which is the base of the pyramid. Then the higher up you get, the shorter amount of time you spend at each respective zone, making up the rest of the pyramid. The point of doing the majority of your time at low intensity, and I'm talking like 70 to 85% of your weekly training volume, is to get the largest benefits out of your high intensity work. Multiple articles have shown that athletes doing 70 to 85% of their weekly volume in Zone 2 regularly outperform athletes that do more intensity and less volume. I'm going to shorten this a lot just because the video is already going to be pretty long, but the main reason for this is because low intensity training stimulates your body to adapt to higher workloads in your muscles while still staying at a low heart rate and exertion level. This is extremely important in cycling, since it means that you would be able to put out more power at the same level of exertion, and therefore you can go faster and harder for longer. Basically, doing research only leads to one conclusion for cyclists, and that's pyramidal and polarized are the two kings, or queens if you swing that way, when it comes to training methods. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a like or a comment, or don't. I don't really care. I just like saying it. I really enjoy making these research videos, and I hope you guys enjoy watching them. I'm trying to make them more entertaining for you guys, and I'm also trying to work on posting more often. So, thank you guys for watching. Whatever time zone you're in, have a good night or day. Yeah, have a good night. Peace.